Okay, welcome back guys. Hello. In this video, we're gonna be talking about learning. Yes, we're gonna be talking about learning. And the reason we're gonna be talking about learning is because this one concept will save you dozens of hours of studying. And this one concept allowed me to score 5s on every single AP exam I took in high school. Well, let's get straight into it. That concept is called relational priority learning. Now, if you've done any research into how to study the science behind learning, you may have heard this term before. It was coined by, I actually don't know who it was coined by, but I heard of it through the YouTuber Justin Sung, who is a fantastic YouTuber. Lots of the information that I got for this video, I got from his channel. So go over there if you want to check him out. He will give you tons of advice. But this is essentially my personalized way of how I applied that information of relational priority learning to score 5s on all of my exams and study in essentially half the time. Okay, so the first thing I want to go over is the difference between memorization priority learning and relational priority learning. So what we want to be doing is relational priority learning. What we typically do is memorization priority learning. Memorization priority learning is essentially thinking of information as isolated facts, right? So whenever we think of, let's say we're in AP World History and the teacher's telling us a date that we need to remember that's important, right? We hear that and we're like, oh crap, I have to remember that date. Let me write it down on a flashcard so I can go over it later. Now, I don't know about y'all, but if y'all have ever gone and like written down flashcards in class and then said you're gonna review them later, I think 9 times out of 10, I typically forget that I even wrote down that on a flashcard. And when I think about going over those flashcards, I don't want to. Like, I think if you have any experience with memorization, it's like this rat race where you get information in your head, you do a couple flashcards, you might remember it for a little bit, but then it just leaves your brain. We're gonna stop all that, right? We're gonna use relational priority learning instead. And the way I'm going to explain relational priority learning is by using Bloom's taxonomy. So Bloom's taxonomy is the hierarchy of thinking that we want to, or that we use whenever we're learning anything. And you have, at the bottom, you have lower order thinking skills, and that is memorization and understanding. And unfortunately, it's how we're taught in schools. And you want to get away from those lower order thinking, memorization and understanding, into the higher order thinking, which is applying, analyzing, evaluating, and creating, right? These higher order thinking skills, once you start to use them subconsciously without having to think about it all the time, you will learn at such a faster rate. It'll feel so much more effortless. You'll retain information better. Okay, but Remy, how do we use relational priority learning? I mean, that's a nice theory, but how do we actually use it? How do we put it into practice? So in order to apply relational priority learning, the most important thing is to be using the big 3. And I call them the big 3 questions, right? So whenever you're consuming information, you want to constantly be asking yourself these big 3 questions. Those questions are, why is this important? Why do I need to know this? And how is it related to XYZ? These questions are so key. They are in of themselves the key to creating relationships, which is all of relational priority learning is. It's creating relationships between ideas to form stronger connections in the brain and retain information better. And one way I like to use this, or explain it at least, is through priming. Now, a lot of y'all might have heard of priming. It is essentially, I like to think of it as cramming for a final exam before the first day of class. We're essentially building a big picture framework of a subject before we even get into class that first day, so that we are prepared to apply relational priority learning. We have a framework of knowledge, a scaffolding, if you will, that we can create relationships with the new information that comes in. How would I do this? Well, let's go over an example. Let's say I'm studying for AP Biology. Let's say it's the summer before your junior or senior year and you're gonna take AP Biology. How would I go about priming and using relational priority learning? The first step I would do was I would go to the course and exam description for the AP test I'm taking, in this case, AP Biology, and I would look at the course at a glance. And now the course at a glance It should give you the units, some of the information about the units, what you're going to be covering, the main ideas, etc. I would simply go over this. I would look at the course at a glance, and I would think, I would apply the big three. I would think, why is this important? Why do I need to know this? Why is unit one and not unit 7? Why are the units ordered in the way they are? I would look at some of the key terms. I would, really think about it, right? So what we're doing here is we're processing the information, we're creating relationships, we're asking questions, and this is already kickstarting the learning process. Then, after looking at the course at a glance, I would actually go to YouTube and I would look for an AP Biology exam review. Then I would watch this video on 1.5 speed. As I'm watching it, as I'm consuming this information, I would mark down the key concepts and key terms that I think are the most important. It's really important that you start making your own connections. You're not going based on what somebody's telling you. You're really thinking of information in a way that makes sense to you. So I would go through the video, I would look at, here are the key concepts, here are the key terms, and mark down, literally on a page, on like a bullet list format, I would mark down the key concepts and key terms that I think are the most important for the entire subject. And once I'm done with that video, I would review the key concepts and key terms, and I would look and I would apply the big three, right? For every single term, I'm thinking, why is it important? How is it related to these other concepts I have here? Why do I need to know it? And then I would create groups. So I would create groups based on the information, how these concepts are related. And it's important that you don't simply group terms or concepts because they are mentioned right after the other in a video, right? Just because they're mentioned right after the other in the video doesn't mean that it's intuitive to how you would actually process that information. Just because a key concept like cell permeability is in unit 2 doesn't mean that you can't put it in a group with a key term that was mentioned for unit 7. In fact, these relationships that you make that are, cross units, right, across units and across the entire subject will create even stronger connections and will help you memorize information and build an even better framework. I'm gonna go over I'm gonna put an example how I would group. I did this for like a data analysis course that I'm taking. And this was essentially a unit it was like an introductory unit on data analysis. I watched all of the videos, I consumed the information, I marked down the key concepts and key terms, and I reviewed them, I applied the big three, and I created intuitive groups based on that. Next step, after you have these key terms and your groups, you're going to create a mind map. So the most important thing about a mind map is that it makes intuitive sense to you. I'm gonna show an example of one of my mind maps that I did with the groups and the key terms for the data analysis course. As you can see, there are lots of personalized drawings. There are lots of arrows of different thicknesses to delineate which relationships are stronger, which ones are weaker. And as you can see, it's simple. It's not flooded with a bunch of information. There's not a ton of writing on it. It's just how I would intuitively think of it. And it's like the big picture framework of the data analysis ecosystem that I can now use whenever I'm in the later units to refer back to and create connections with, right? The majority of your time should be spent thinking about the groups and the relationships, less time worrying about what it looks like on the page. All in all, we covered why you don't want to do memorization priority learning, why you want to use relational priority learning instead, and sort of how I would go about using relational priority learning in the context of priming for a subject. I hope this video helped. I hope you can derive some value from it and that hopefully you can put into practice some of the concepts I went over in this video. All right, guys, peace out.